this guy yesterday, on Sunday night, I was like, okay, I'm finally going to do it. And kids went to sleep, and then, I started working on the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini took almost, a month to come in because it's back ordered because everyone and their moms is working on making one.
Everyone wants an AI agent, man. I'm glad you got one.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
finally got a Mac Mini, and then, I started working on it. The process is a little technical, Sometimes not everyone who I don't think anyone and everyone can just work on it. It does require some technical knowledge or understanding, but it was a pretty straightforward process. It kind of guides you through and ended up setting up. But since then, I've just been constantly addicted to it. It's pretty amazing of what all the things they can do. I've been sending Adil emails.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there and correct you. You haven't been sending me emails. Your AI agent has been spamming me with emails.
Yeah,
It's like, I am Humayun's digital assistant, blah blah blah. I'm like, "Dude,
no, literally, I did
yet
a
another email to delete."
hey, I
It's
did
actually pretty smart though.
it's very
It's
smart.
yeah, yeah, it's good.
I did a meeting today, and we did the meeting. The notes, like I used this app called Granola to kind of extract all the information, and automatically, just as the meeting was done, it created an email and sent it to the people that were in the meeting perfectly, like layered with to-do tasks and everything, and saved it and decided, oh, which people will be in this meeting. It kind of learns things on its own. I don't know if you have any experience with that, Ben or Adil.
Yeah, Granola did that or OpenClaw did that?
Well, Granola you can do that with too, but OpenClaw, kind of made the email much nicer and sent it through the Gmail account and addressed everyone. Granola requires a few more things. Granola is a good software, but OpenClaw kind of automates everything. From social media posts to anything you want to automate in your life. It can just do a lot more than I thought it could.
Yeah, yeah. I have a friend of mine who's deep into OpenClaw. Like he's such an evangelist. He calls himself being open claw pilled. Um, and I get it, especially when you discover like this new tool and can automate so much. Me personally, there's not a lot in my current position that I'm able to automate. It's a lot of like decision making, executive tasks, decision making. But if I was scaling a company and had a lot of people under me and had to manage teams and processes, yeah, I would be spending a lot of time investing into learning OpenClaw and how I can automate my more routine daily tasks. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, this is an interesting episode because you're our second guest, and this is the first time I'm going into knowing nothing or close to nothing about you. Still knows you much better than me, and then the first guest that was on our podcast, I knew him well, and Adil was going in blind. So this is a new for me. So I'll be asking you a lot of questions. You have a very unique story that I want to hear about, and everything that you do from your the work that you do and your path to where you got there. So, it's very interesting. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll just intro you a little bit for the audience. I mean, you've got a very unique background with medical school, business school, entrepreneurship, and all the stuff you've done. So Ben and I were roommates in medical school at Baylor College of Medicine. But Ben's path, he started his education at Stanford for undergrad, and then you worked mostly in tech. And then you went to Kellogg, you got your MBA there at Northwestern, and you had a successful career there. You had your own ventures going, and then you had some personal setbacks, health setbacks, which we'll get into, which kind of reset you a little bit, like a new lease on life, and that's what prompted you to get into medical school. And then you totally made a career change, went to medical school, and that's where we met and became friends. And we've been friends ever since. And you've had multiple different ventures since then. So I think the path is very interesting and very atypical. I mean, just tell us a little bit about that. Like well before we were roommates, well before you started in medical school, you had a very different mindset and your goals were very different. I mean, what was your path in education and then career wise when you first started out?
Let's
Yeah,
start
yeah.
with where were you born?
So
When a man loves a woman, this is how it all begins.
yeah, I graduated, and immediately after graduating, I became a software engineer. I didn't have the background for it, but this was in the dot-com boom areas when you didn't really need much of a background. They would, you had a good degree from a good school. All right, we'll train you up. But I, yeah, I jumped into software programming and I picked it up really quickly. And I did that for 6 years. So that was in Los Angeles. I worked for a dot-com startup, e-commerce, and then after that, a video platform, and I was deep into the tech stuff. So I was programming in Java back then, and database programming. And then I did that about 6 years, and then I decided, okay, what I really wanted is to go into entrepreneurship. That was always kind of like I had that that in my DNA as a little kid. I was always doing like lemonade stands and mowing lawns and like always little side hustles. And so I was like, all right, let me see how I can take this to the next stage in entrepreneurship of some kind. So I went to business school, and in business school, you kind of get kind of directed towards certain paths, right? Those paths are going to be like consulting, investment banking, at my school maybe CPG, consumer products. So that was like, all right, I guess I'm headed that direction. I guess I'm headed towards like a consulting, maybe a tech consulting career path. And then life took me in a different direction. So in the summer between my first and second years of business school at Kellogg, I had a headache and that I felt in the back of my neck. And then I knew that something was bad, something was wrong, right? It wasn't a normal headache. So I was with somebody who did not know how to drive stick shift. So I actually had to drive
Oh
myself
no.
to the hospital because she didn't know how to drive stick shift, and I'm vomiting into a plastic bag. I'm octopus arm, just like doing that. I get to the
You
ER,
were driving the stick while vomiting in the bag.
while vomiting into a bag. In
Jeez.
retrospect, maybe I should have called an ambulance, but we were really close to the medical center in medical school emergency room in Dallas. So, anyways, I go to the emergency room and I stand at the end of the line, right? I was like, oh, this is a long line, your typical like county emergency room,
Yeah.
back of the line. And so I called a friend of mine from undergrad, and I said, hey, Kevin, I described the symptoms. I said, hey, I'm vomiting. I've got pain in my neck and I can't turn my head to the left or the right. Like, I feel really dizzy. What do I do? And he
It
goes,
almost
well,
sounds like meningitis.
sounds like you're having some kind of like maybe a brain hemorrhage. Like, I would not
Right.
stand in line right now. Go to the triage nurse, give her the phone. I'll talk to her, and we'll take it from there. So handed her the phone. The triage nurse talked to my friend. I forgot that he's in medical school at this time, and so nurse, she said, all right, we need to like, she had me filling out some forms just because like, you're done with these forms, we're going to take you back. So they took me back into, I don't know what you call it, one of those like little observation rooms,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so they immediately pretty much diagnosed what was going on. I think I had a quick CT scan. They diagnosed that I had a brain bleed. Didn't know where it was coming from. So then they inserted, what is it called? Shunt. They inserted a
Yeah.
shunt in my forehead, right? And I was like, holy cow, like there's no anesthesia. I mean, there's local anesthesia, but
Yeah.
you're just staring at this. What I found out later was a medical school resident, surgery resident, and this guy's drilling a hole into my forehead. I'm looking at it, and I can hear the reverberations of the skull cracking as it goes through. And then the shunt was inserted, and I don't know, it's kind of flash forward to I'm in ICU, and I'm in bed in ICU, and I'm in there, and kind of like, praying to God, saying like, please help me through this night, help me through this night, help me through this night. If you do, I promise you, I will do my best to make an impact with the second chance. And so I survived that night, and then felt a little bit wobbly, and so I guess I had through the next few days I had a little bit of like, I don't know, dizziness that ended up being in my cerebellum, so that quickly subsided. Basically, I was very lucky to have recovered. My recovery was very quick. I didn't have any memory or cognitive issues, but now I had like some major things to think about with the rest of my life, right? So of course, I went back to business school since everything seemed normal, like cognitively. Went back to business school, and I decided like I needed to make some changes, right? I graduated business school, and then the next year I decided I wanted to go and make some changes and kind of devote the rest of my life to helping patients out. And that's when I decided to go to medical school. So that was my motivation for going to medical school, is to help patients out. So I took the MCAT, spent 2 years redoing my undergrad, and I was fortunate enough to get into Baylor College of Medicine, fortunate enough to meet you and my good friends there. And Adil became my roommate second year. First year we were like in the same building, in the same
Yeah,
complex.
yeah, it's just like down the
Yeah.
hall, basically.
Yeah, so that is the story of how I got to medical school. You want to
Yeah.
I'll pause there and can ask
Ben,
any
I just
questions.
wonder what your personal statement was about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, a big part of my personal statement, and I forgot to, I mean, this is part of also, is after I recovered, the minute I recovered, I tried to find um, support on the internet for people who had gone what I had been through, who went through what I was going through, and I couldn't find it. And this was before Facebook was around. There wasn't these communities and these groups, so I started my own support group for my own, for what the rare disease that caused that brain bleed in me. And that support group became a second support group for a different rare disease, became a third support group for a different rare disease, and we just kept on going. And before you know it, we had 40 support groups, online support groups for people with rare diseases. And at our peak, probably 100,000 people visiting one of our support groups. And we formalized that into a nonprofit called Ben's Friends. And that's been running for 20 years now, 20 years and counting now. So that's what I wrote about in my personal statement.
It's a hell of a personal statement. We'll also include a link for the listeners to Ben's Friends in the show notes. It's awesome. I support Ben's Friends too. It's wonderful for people with rare diseases to find, for one, other patients like themselves, and also recommendations for providers that treat rare diseases like this, what's given them comfort and stuff. It's a fantastic resource.
Ben, I have a lot to, relate to you because I've done a lot of the similar things in life, but in different order. So, I did go to business school and did an MBA, went to med school, but after med school in my second year of cardiology fellowship, I started developing numbness in my arms, and both my left leg and left arm started getting numb and weak over time, and got worse and worse. And there was a point where I couldn't even walk, run, or do any physical activity. I kept ignoring it because I just had a baby and just had I was in fellowship. I just wanted to kind of ignore it, and eventually, finally, through some motivation, got an MRI done and found I had a huge schwannoma that was like compressing on my C3, C4 level of my spine, which was causing. So went through the whole neurosurgical evaluation and surgery. I stay in the ICU, and when you go through something like that, you feel like you have a lease on life. You start appreciating life much more. You kind of, when you're going through those phases like you talked about, when you're in that ICU bed and you're saying, just give me one more chance to live my life, and I'll make a big change, and I'll try to live my life in a better way, relate to people. And I was at that time a doctor, so I was already seeing patients. I was a cardiology fellow. So for me, it gave me a huge perspective on what patients feel like when they're in that hospital bed, in that ICU, going through something like that. That made a big impact, and I felt like I had a new lease on life. And going through that whole experience, so I'm sure it was pretty profound for you too, because your thing was much more serious and pretty acute.
Yeah, it was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, right?
Yeah.
Like it puts everything up into perspective. You have business challenges, you've got social challenges, you got, yeah, but it's hard to compete like with the the challenges of like a serious medical condition.
Exactly. And looking
Yeah, it
back,
really puts it in perspective, like, it's cliched, but it's so true how important your health is. I mean, it's irreplaceable. It's the most valuable resource, being healthy.
Yeah, what is that saying? The poor man wants many things, the sick man wants only one thing.
yeah, exactly. is so true. And when you go through that experience, you kind of start realizing what are the things important in life. What things are more important in life. It puts you in perspective. So let me ask you this: when you got to med school, now you're in medical school, and you're studying and learning about some stuff that you went through yourself. There's a whole neuroradiology block and whatnot. What are some things you're going through? What are you thinking? That was this everything you dreamed to be? Or everything you think you will be able to accomplish your goals through medical
Mm.
school? What was the experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for the first time in my life, I was like, wow, this is real school. This is real academic challenge. I don't know. I think in undergrad, I just kind of coasted. And then in business school is not known to be academically challenging. So, kind of coasted with medical school is like, holy, they through 6 week blocks, right? You got to learn so much in 6 weeks, and you have your exam, and then it repeats and repeats. I'd never gone through the intensity of like that anything before, so that's my first like reaction about like reflection when I think about to medical school is just how rigorous it was and how intense it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I had a lot of non-traditional students in my medical school class. And for people who are listening, non-traditional, in medical school, there's a few types of people. There's people that, go through the 4 years of college and then get into medical school right away and then start do their four years of med school and go on to do residency. So they never really have gone in the real world and seen what's going on, never had a job before or a real job before. And then there's non-traditional students that have had a career, have done some stuff, have gone to grad school or done other stuff, and then they come to medical school and I felt like those kind of students in my class were the most hardworking and had a true appreciation of medical school, because when you've done other stuff and this is something you truly chose versus a 21-year-old choosing to go into medicine, right?
Yeah, yeah, again, like I was very happy to be there, very appreciative, very grateful. So although mentioned that it was intense and rigorous, yeah, but I was very grateful. Um, I'm still grateful for every day. Like that's the main one of the main things in my life now. Main themes in my life is gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Right. So especially so fresh off of kind of my recovery, and then trying to make an impact, and then getting to the opportunity to make an impact in that way. I was just grateful to be there.
And it was like quite a commitment too. I mean, you're in the middle of MBA school, you're about to go in one completely different route, and to rededicate yourself and totally switch paths. I mean, basically going back to undergrad, since your initial major when you were at Stanford was economics, right? It wasn't science related, like it wasn't hard science. So you had to do all the prerequisites again, like biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, all that stuff, in order to take the MCAT and then go to med school. It's a long commitment. I mean, you got to go back and basically do almost half of the undergrad requirements again. That's a long route to really dedicate
Yeah,
yourself to.
yeah. I think part of it is I never had the sunk cost fallacy, right? It was
Yeah.
like, it wasn't that hard for me to start over, right? And what happened after medical school was kind of a little bit of a repetition of that, but it was never like hard to start over, and I never really, especially after the experience, I never really cared what people thought about me. Like, and it gets even further on the next chapter. It's like, okay, what are people going to think about me leaving business school and starting over and to going into medical school? What are people going to think about me? That was never a concern for me. I think I don't know. I'm just not. No, I'm not kind of wired that way, and also the experience eliminated anything like that kind of in my mindset.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome, because I think it's very common for people to say, I don't care what others think of me. But I think it's even more than that, because as humans, we by default, it's our like societal evolution. We have to at some level care, or at least be aware of what others are thinking of us. It what makes us part of the tribe, right? I mean, when we were back in hunter-gatherer societies, if you were excluded because you were different or odd, that meant death. It meant you wouldn't survive with your clan. So like in modern day, it means not necessarily like you don't care. It's that I'm going to carve my own path regardless of what the norm might be. You know what I mean? I think that is like a little bit of more so reality, in terms of it's not that you don't care what anyone thinks, you just think what your path and your route or your change of direction is more valuable and more important than just because I finished my MBA, now I must go get a consulting job.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other
I
thing that
think
happens is also, I feel whenever it's also age thing and experience thing, right? When you've lived through certain experiences, you've had a job, and you've gone through a major health crisis, things will be okay. You know that I'm doing this for myself. Any setbacks, will get through those. You develop a certain type of resilience where setbacks, failures, or so-called failures don't phase you as much anymore, because things can get better, and you've also been through the lowest of the lows sometimes, especially if you've had a job outside, you've been kind of talking down to by a boss or a supervisor, or but a lot of people in medical school, when they go to, they've never had a real job, they've never really been under a boss or a supervisor, they've never really had major setbacks, because you're 21, 22 years old. But when you've had real life experiences, I think some of those things you stop caring about, because you don't care what people think. You know what's kind of your task is and what your mission in life is, and you kind of pursue that despite all the setbacks. So that also is one of the things to mind with your experiences and the things that you went through, which is much more different than other medical school students who are coming through a traditional mindset.
And then the saying that comes to mind is that other people are no one. How's it go? People are too worried about what you think about them to worry. I'm butchering it.
Yeah.
Did you guys know the saying?
Yeah, I know what you
Yeah.
mean. Like when people like you as a person worry too much about what people think about you, but no one really is really thinking about you as much as you think they are, right?
That's what it is. Yeah, people are
That's
not
not the
thinking
real
like
saying,
you
but I
think
just
they are.
kind of summarized it.
Yeah, they're too busy worried about what you think about them. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
but let's talk
Yeah.
about your medical school journey. You kind of go through medical school, and at some point you decide this is not for you. Or tell me a little bit more about that. So you left medical school.
Yeah. So it wasn't it wasn't as intentional as that. It wasn't like I, decided it wasn't for me. It's that the first year, a friend of mine had approached me. He had a business idea, and the business idea was in e-commerce. And he said that I was his tech friend from, like, I was his techie guy, right? And I knew him before, and we like, kind of tinkered on some stuff. And he said he asked me if I could help him out with some website stuff. And I said, sure, I'll help you out with the website stuff and whatever you need. And so it was just a little bit of time in the beginning because I was busy, right? You get like exam after exam after exam. But it was a good idea that he had, and it started to actually generate traction and customers and revenue at a small scale, and it was significant, like enough on a unit economic basis. It was significant enough to kind of notice, right?
It
And so it
wasn't
kept on
Jeff Bezos,
growing and
right? You're
growing.
not talking about Jeff Bezos. Just
No, I'm not talking about that.
all right. Just making sure.
Yeah,
Just not
yeah.
making sure you're
So,
not like a co-founder of Amazon or something that we're
Yeah.
so second year, I kept on helping him out with second year. And by second year, it was pretty obvious that there was something here. At one point, then I started clinical rotations. I remember I was in general surgery, and maybe there was a little bit of relation because gen surge is kind of like, eh, kind of rough, or what do they call it, butts and guts, and
Yeah,
so
butts and guts, dude.
butts and guts. Uh, I actually only did two rotations. I did family practice, during which I found myself kind of trying to optimize the clinic rather than trying to like treat the patient. I went to the director and said, hey, I have some ideas on how to optimize the clinic. And so that was like, I was caring a lot more about that than like, whatever patient
But that's
interaction.
interesting. I mean, that's just like what your mindset was, right? Your default thinking was to see potential inefficiencies or processes that you could improve upon, right?
Yeah, it was like really clear. And I was at home thinking about like, this doesn't make sense. You got this over here, this line over here, and just like coordinate. And I don't know. I think most of my grade was related to the process improvements that I put into the clinic.
I mean, most students are there sitting, memorizing cholesterol metabolism. Ben is like, okay, open claw before open claw. Let's automate this.
I was trying to automate. I really was. second rotation was general surgery, and that kind of coincided at the time where things started to really take off. So I went to the dean of the medical school, Dr. Brandt, I believe her name was,
Yeah,
and I
yeah, Dr. Brandt,
explained,
Barry Brandt.
yeah, I
Yeah.
explained that I was helping a friend out with his venture, and it seemed pretty promising, and I would like to explore it a little bit. And she said, "Yeah, well, we have a policy here where you have to can take like a leave of absence, and we'll hold your spot for a year." So I said, "Okay, thanks. I'm going to do that." So I packed up a suitcase. I didn't pack up all my things because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I packed up a suitcase and loaded it up into my truck, and then drove from Houston to Austin and said, "All right, I'm here, my business partner. Let's make this happen." And at this time, I was just finished business school, just finished medical school, tons of business school debt, tons of medical school debt. Worried if I made the right decision. Worried if I was going to be broke forever, right? But I was like, this is, I guess, entrepreneurship. You never know what's going to happen. It's what's the worst that can happen is that you're going to be broke, right? So that I think I was listening to some Tim Ferriss stuff, so him talking about like voluntary poverty and saying, all right, you got to face your fears. You got to expose yourself to the worst thing that could possibly happen to you to eliminate the fear. So I said, all right, well, if the worst thing that could happen is I'm homeless, let me just start out that way. So I lived in the car. I lived in the backseat of my truck for about a month. Every morning I would take a shower at 24 Hour Fitness, and then I would go work at Starbucks. And I was like, all right, this is the worst it could possibly be. I'm okay. I'll survive. And then that lasted about a month. We found a warehouse, and then we were up and running. It was me in the beginning, me and my co-founder in the beginning. Eventually, we grew that to 500 employees, like a very good sized e-commerce company that I consider a success. Exiting now and looking onto like the next ventures that I'm going to start. One of which is probably going to be my main thing. Is I would love to get back into the healthcare space, kind of merging my patient experience plus my brief medical school experience plus my entrepreneurial experience all into something that is in the digital health space.
It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a very inspiring story, and it takes that, right? When you are starting something new, when you are going through a business venture, you're in a startup, it requires you to live a certain way. You cannot expect to be, living a luxurious life. You want to cut all corners, make sure your one single focus right there is that startup, because that what is the true leverage you have, right? That's what's going to take you to the next level, and that's exactly what you did. I mean, all the self-help books out there that kind of talk about that, right? Entrepreneurial books that talk about what it takes to be a true entrepreneur. You literally live that life, and it's hard to meet people in real life that actually did it. You always hear about it. You hear stories. You read books, and it's kind of fun seeing someone who truly lived that life and went through that process.
Mm.
Yeah, one question, Ben. I mean, there's so many people, like I'm sure many people listening. I mean, I'm sure me and Humayun both, every person has ideas, and they have like an inclination to act on it, to do something. And there's reasons, whether just in their own head or external, whatever it is, whether you're nervous, you worry about your finances. Oh, I just bought a house, now I have a mortgage. Oh, we just had a kid. I have a family now. Like, there's so many things, so many reasons, so much stuff that could potentially hold someone back. Whether legitimate or not is besides the point. There's just stuff that holds you back. I mean, what was your thought process during this? Like a little deeper dive when you were talking with the dean, thinking about leave of absence versus just cutting it, the probability of success versus not. Like, how did that factor in? Because it's a huge decision. You had just devoted a lot of time, effort, money, and mental load, and potentially foregoing quite lucrative job opportunities to do this whole path. And then you jumped ship, not in a negative way, but because some other opportunity that seemed more enticing to you came up. Like, what was your real thought process during that time?
Well, it was fresh enough after my kind of my near death experience that I was still, and still, I'm still always will be on this like mentality was you only get one life, right? And so I don't want to regret not taking chances, right? That was like, all right, I don't want to regret not having gone and taking the chance. Like, okay, I fail. I guess I have a pretty good backup, right? I got a good college degree. I can like a good MBA program. Like I will be able to survive, and I can live in my truck. Worst comes to worst.
There you go. You
That's
can
a
you can go caveman.
Yeah, I can go caveman. I will be okay. And yeah, so that was okay. I have a solid backup, and it's you only get one chance. What else is
Sometimes you have to just go for it, right? Sometimes you cannot have those doubts in your mind. When you have a certain focus, and you live through the right. You kind of saw the .com or e-commerce boom, right? When before medical school, you lived in California, and you went to Stanford, which is a pretty big startup. There's a huge startup culture with Stanford, right? So you kind of saw that, and you saw that what it takes to be entrepreneur, right, and be part of these businesses. That kind of puts you in the mindset where taking those risks is worth it because you know what's on the other side of it. Sometimes, but it's still hard, and it's still hard. We often tell ourselves, oh yeah, we make 20 excuses before we take risks. My mortgage is true. Like, I don't have too many savings yet. I can't live in a car. I have a family. I have kids. Well, what else? Whatever. But sometimes when you truly need to achieve something and create a business, I think it takes that kind of dedication, and you truly have to be single-minded for the most part.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy today, so I'm looking to buy his business, and he was sharing how his business failed. He was $250,000 underwater, right? So he went from like the business okay, and businesses come and go, cycles, and he was 250 underwater, right? And he just refused to let that be like the last chapter, right? So he started over. Um, started from nothing and just kind of grind. And then now he's a successful businessman and who, I'm looking to buy one of his businesses. So I just like, that was what I shared with him. I was most impressed was that, just that tenacity, right? And I'm a child of an immigrant. You guys are also, right?
Yeah, all three
Like
of us.
that's something special that I think we have is we see that what it took, right, for our parents to get where they are, and we don't take it for granted. And I think we're very lucky for in that aspect that we have that like that innate tenacity from from our common shared experience.
Yeah, for sure. So, Ben, I kind of want to, people kind of romanticize about that startup life or growing company, and you said though it was me and my co-founder, and then you went on to have 500 employees, but you did not talk about a big chunk of going from those two people to 500 employees. There's a lot of growing pains, right? In entrepreneurship, like, and there's almost so many times where you get enticed to, okay, maybe this is the time to sell. Okay, I'm at 70 employees now. Maybe this is the time to sell my business and exit. And this is the time, I have 250 employees. Okay, I'm big enough now. Now maybe I should look for a private equity deal. What kind of you guys saw in your business, and what kind of challenges you saw, and what kind of growth you saw that you kept going and built it up to a 500 employee business, which is a pretty large business, right?
Yeah. So challenges, our business, um, our business like kind of hit a wave, right? It hit like a nice wave where there were just a lot of demand. So the biggest challenge we have were good challenges. There were scaling, like for about maybe 8 of those years, we're moving warehouses every single year. Like outgrew this, move to a bigger warehouse. Outgrew this, move to that. So that's like a fun kind of challenge.
Yeah.
Um, Other challenges that we face like after that have been like in the turbulent periods, right? And that's like a more of a mental, emotional challenge, right? And it's like, okay, there's days when it's really hard and you just had to like find a way, right? Like you just had to, there's days that I have a playlist, right? And I have a playlist on those, a Spotify playlist when those days are really, really hard. And it's just like, I don't know, it's like songs that will just motivate you. And like, I don't know, whatever motivates you to like, you may have workout mixes or like when you really, really, really need some help. I've got like my motivational playlist. I also have like a Joe Rogan, I don't know. Yeah, there's a bunch of compilations of like motivational speeches that he gives because
He's
he's
our
like,
direct competitor, by the way. It's funny you say that, but the different challenges that come in, every business and, being part of a couple of businesses, I feel like this is what I see a trajectory where the business is growing and growing, and then it starts kind of plateauing and kind of going a little downhill. And until you make those really good decisions about the business and make some certain changes or growth decisions, then the business goes from that downhill trajectory to then an uphill. And then it has to keep going through these loops of growth, plateauing, and decline, and then you have to make certain changes and growth decisions for it to go to the next level, and the next level, the next level. And those levels come with all kinds of growing pains, right? You go from two founders to like 10 employees, and then you have to worry about HR issues like adding health insurance and paying for employees and employees having conflict and resolving those, and then you hire middle managers, and then you have to figure out how to manage middle managers and what they're doing, and how to create different KPIs or ways to assess these middle managers. And then it grows even more, and then you get so disconnected from the business that you don't really know what's going on the granular level, and you then have bigger challenges and to think about growth. There's a lot of lessons in that. So, what are some big business lessons or principles that you've learned from your experiences, in this kind of growth that you went through?
Yeah, I mean, every path has its own challenges, right? Like entrepreneurship, I love it. It's just so exciting, right? But it's not for everybody, right? There's you don't get some as an entrepreneur in the early days and then late days and whatever. Sometimes there's no guarantee, there's no certainty, right? Like it's just the highs are high, the lows are low, and you just got to accept that this is the path that you're on if you're an entrepreneur, right?
Does
Or a
that
business.
does that lack of certainty scare you at all, or did it at all? And you powered forward regardless, or you didn't really have a fear of that?
Yeah, it was definitely scary. I mean, this is scary, um, but I guess you accept it, right? Because the alternative sometimes is you do the same thing every day, right? So though you asked about like those challenges that as you scale, every problem is a new problem to you, and that is like really exciting to have constant new problem, new problem, new problem, new problem. So it's a trade-off, right? Sometimes you don't have certainty of like income or stability or financial stability, but you have constant excitement, 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 problem solving, problem solving, problem solving. Well, you know, like the grass could be greener on the other side. Maybe if that like uncertainty is too much, and then you join like a corporation and get a corporate job, you have guaranteed certainty in that paycheck arriving every two weeks. But like you trade off those challenges that you were getting excited about when it was just scaling and growing and up and down. It could be, it could be a little bit mundane, right? So I guess my point is that there's trade-offs. There's no perfect path. It's just like um, whatever path fits you. And if you've got like that entrepreneurial kind of itch, I think it's worth exploring because, as in my case, like it hit me really hard that you only get one opportunity. You only get one chance at life.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, idea that you just said, because I feel like, there's in medicine, there's physicians that work for larger corporations or larger practices, and their job is come in, see patients, do their notes, call in prescriptions, whatever, and then move on, and the next day come back and do the same thing, and you're not really doing as much problem solving as in. But as a practice owner, what excites me the most is the different challenges that come in every day, different areas of optimization, or how to make the practice more smoother, how to grow the practice, hiring more people. Whenever I'm adding new services, that's when I'm the most excited about coming to work, right? When I'm playing with these different AI technologies to optimize my practice and building new softwares for my practice, that's when I get most excited, because that's truly where the daily challenges come in. Patient care, for as you become a professional and you've been doing this for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever, patient care becomes part of the routine. That's not something that's, it becomes second nature, because you're seeing similar things on a daily basis, and you have certain patients that are challenging, and you enjoy treating them, and the reward comes there. But on the day-to-day basis in a clinic, you're seeing a lot of repetitive stuff. But truly, the fun for me comes in from optimizing my practice and using the practice as a playground for new technology, right? And that's where I get excited, and I kind of see what you're saying with that as well. So you grew your business. So and then that kind of allowed you to kind of go into different ventures, right? To look into other businesses, buying business, or starting your the group that we talked about, Ben's Friends. So let's get into the next phase of your life. Once you grew your business big enough that you were able to think about investing in other businesses, and then growing your organization that you started when you had that illness.
Yeah, yeah. So now I'm moving on to the, I guess, next chapter. I haven't quite figured out exactly what I'll be doing next, but I've got like a two-pronged approach, at least a two-pronged approach. One is going to be that I'm a software engineer, and I believe in AI, and I know that AI is going to disrupt. It's obvious to everybody how disruptive it's going to be, right? So I am betting on AI in a couple of different ways. I'm an advisor and co-founder to a freight AI software company that we've got some funding offers, and we're going to go and pursue some more funding, or we may bootstrap it. I'm not sure, but it's like very high tech, very like big VC fundable kind of idea. And then I'm helping him start the same co-founder start something in healthcare services. My kind of digital health piece of that is going to be, I think I want to do a patient advocacy, an AI enabled patient advocacy venture, right? So I've got this AI kind of stuff. And then over on the opposite end, I have the anti-AI play. So I want to get into a blue collar business that is AI proof and recession proof. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but like I want this over here as like my stability, cash flow, AI proof. Like it's not going to be disrupted by AI. And I'll probably be just maybe I'll be an investor, owner, not my daily operations. But over here, I'll have like the fun, sexy, high risk, high reward stuff that will that is like makes the most use of my skill set.
It's like a
So
personal hedge fund going.
Yeah, yeah, just you're hedging the risks and you're playing both sides. But I also just love like your comfort, Ben, with the uncertainty. You know what I mean? Like you have a general plan and you're kind of just letting it play out organically as you learn and seek out opportunities. Like you mentioned, you talked to the guy the other day about the business who initially he was kind of underwater and then he turned it around and you're thinking about buying it. I mean, you're just kind of letting it play out rather than in a rush, or you just don't have like a single focus and seeing where the chips fall. I think that's very cool, and I think it's also something that would make a lot of people uncomfortable, really not having like a set plan and just kind of going with the flow in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it is challenging. You got to take it day by day, right?
Yeah.
Every day is like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Faith in yourself and confidence in yourself, and like, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out. And also, things get too hectic. Like, my wife has become, I don't know, in a way, kind of like my executive life coach. She's always like, we always remind each other because we have like, I don't know, we ask each other a similar question. We kind of remind each other like if we're really stressed about something, we think and we just ask each other, when you're 80 years old, is what you're worrying about right now really going to matter, right? And so that kind of frames it as like, okay, what's really important are family. Family is really important. Like, I want to make sure that I get those things right because as I become like a successful entrepreneur, I interact with other successful entrepreneurs, and you will find that the wealth that people have doesn't really make them happy. You have, I bet, so many people that are like, I don't know, extremely wealthy. We're talking high level, right? And we're talking like divorces, multiple divorces, kids that they don't see very often. And I don't want to make that mistake. So let me just get the big things right. Let me make sure I get friends, family, relationship, like the big things. I want to make sure that I get those right. And the rest of it, we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, that's I just want to say, chime in on there. I know Humayun, you were about to say something, but I think that's huge. Like keeping your focus with your family and your friends and the ones that have been with you from the beginning, right? No one is successful on their own. No one is an island. No one has done anything only by themselves. It's so much support. Like, our wives, our parents, our friends, siblings, whatever it is, people support you, even if all it is you just talk to them on the way home from work and talk about your day or some challenge you had. You talk with your wife like, hey, this is what I'm focusing on. This is what I'm worried about. What do you think about this? Do you think this is a good idea right now? We just had another kid. Should I do this? Should we invest in this? Should we not? You know what I mean? Like just the constant conversations and support and feedback, ability to bounce ideas off, people to check you if you get a little too cocky or too aggressive. I mean, those are very important things. And like, Ben, you're probably within our friend group, our core group of like 8 or 9 guys, you're always keeping in touch with everybody, planning events for everybody to get around. You're always driving from Austin to see your parents just north of Houston. It's not just you mentioned on the podcast. Like I know this about you. You really walk the walk, and I think that's very admirable because so many people, once they hit the next levels, they kind of like let that fall by the wayside, and they pick up the little groupies or whatever along the way, and that's the quickest way to do exactly what you're saying. Get mired in habitual divorces and having no real friends, just a bunch of people that tag along with you and stuff, and really not be happy. So being grounded is so, so important.
Yeah. The true measure of wealth is not the money you have, but usually it is your ability to say no to things, because the things you can say no to, because you want to go from, oh yeah, I need to do this or I have to do this, from I want to do this, right? Be able to have that freedom is true wealth. So for you to be able to say that, hey, I really have to go to work tomorrow because I do need to make that money so I can pay for the bills and everything that's amassed in my life as expense, instead of being, say, I want to do this and this is what I'm doing. That's true wealth and that's true freedom. Freedom, I think, is wealth. Freedom to spend time with your family, freedom to spend time with your kids, show up to your kids' important life events, showing up to your wife's important appointments and life events, being there for your parents, and having the time to do so. I think that's a bigger measure of wealth than any amount of money that could ever be. You can have billions of dollars, but if you have kids that don't want to see you, and if you're not in touch with your parents, and if you've been divorced 3 times, you're truly not rich. So I think I completely agree with you guys. Money is only a number. It does help up to a certain extent. Having money problems is better than having no money problems. But then, when money comes, then after that, I think at a certain point, it does not bring much happiness. What brings happiness is family and friends. So tell us about Ben's friends a little bit. I mean, that's something that is unique, and I saw that you started a long time ago. It seems like it has grown quite a bit.
Yeah. So, all right. So I had the brain bleed. It was caused by an arteriovenous malformation, AVM. And so I went on the internet. This is 2006 when I had my rupture, and I couldn't find the support I was looking for. So, given my engineering background and kind of my entrepreneurial mindset, I was like, oh, I'll just create my own. So I created a website, called it avmsurvivors.org, started spreading the word, started like posting on bulletin boards, and I don't even know if Reddit was around, but whatever, stuff like that. Posting, and hey, come check us out, come check us out. So eventually, I think the first month we had like 10 people join. The second month, kind of like 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, 500 people. Eventually, like it was the number one community for AVM out there, right? And at that time, like SEO brought. And so a friend of mine, Scott from business school, said, hey, this is fantastic. I was just reading this book called Tribes by Seth Godin, and he talked about like you're building, about the importance of building your tribe. And so what you have built is like your little tribe. And he pitched me. He was like, there's probably other people out there with a different rare disease who don't have a tribe like you have. Why don't you build a website for them? So I said, sure. So we kind of picked like a random rare disease that we thought needed a tribe, and we created a second community that did well, created a third community that did well, and so we kept on creating communities. Eventually we got up to 100,000 users per month visiting one of our websites. And so all of this, and so I think around, or before that, 2012 was when we officially filed as a 501c3 nonprofit. So it's kind of pretty simple. Just we provide patient support, peer-to-peer patient support for people with rare disease as a nonprofit. Been doing that for 20 years now. We did get to a peak. Now the landscape has changed. Now Facebook exists, and so you have Facebook groups. So the need is not quite as acute. So we are more like tapering down rather than like going nuts as a nonprofit. But that's okay. It's a nonprofit, right? So we don't have any investors to answer to. We can do whatever we want. So we can just shrink. We're not going to do any more. Actually, I haven't announced this yet, but we're not going to do any more fundraisers ever again. We've got enough cash to just kind of like coast on the small number of communities that are active, and then when eventually we'll transition those and just call it mission accomplished.
Great.
That's awesome. It's funny. I've actually had a few patients that have found me through Ben's friends. Because, the patients talk about doctors that treat rare conditions for there's like hypermobility conditions that lead to like shoulder problems, stuff like that. So actually, it was funny. This is like maybe a year ago, a patient brought up that's how she found me. And I was like, you won't believe it, but that's like one of my best friends. That was my roommate in med school, whose name is Ben. She thought I was joking. I was like, no, I'm serious. I pulled up a picture on my phone. That's Ben. It was a very cool moment. I think I texted you about it a while back, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the best things I've ever done. And
yeah.
So do you guys have events or in-person mixers or?
No, it's all online.
It's all online community.
There's some like individual groups that like self-organize, right? And so they'll have like little meetups, but for the most part, it's all online. It's all global.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what was the rare disease that group like blew up like the fastest, and you saw like a fast interest, which the membership rose very fast? Which one were some of the rare diseases that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first ones in which there was a lot of like push to market them. So arterial AVM, avmsurvivors.org, that was probably the largest one. What else? Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was a big one for a while.
That's what that patient had who came and saw me.
Oh, really? Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, Ehlers-Danlos. I see quite a bit of patients with that too because of the cardiac involvement and a lot of palpitation and POTS-like syndrome, and I see quite a bit of patients, and they're always looking for a supportive community. It's a very debilitating disease, especially the cardiac symptoms when they have a lot of palpitations and dizziness and shortness of breath. Definitely it'd be great to kind of direct them away and just see if they could find support and find other ideas, because sometimes those are also very frustrating to treat because you can try a lot of different things and things are not getting better, right? So rare disease is one of those things. There's always we're looking for ideas or ways to find treatments, and I know I don't know if you know that much about me, but I am in we run a large clinical research organization where we conduct clinical trials all over the country, and rare disease is one of those things that different pharmaceutical companies are trying to come up with new pharmaceutical drugs to target those rare communities, right? And it's hard for us to kind of take on those studies sometimes because it's hard to find patients with rare disease because there's so very few. It's rare disease, right? And in a certain location, like in Houston, in the community center, it's very hard to find patients who would want to be part of those clinical trials for a potentially life-changing treatment. So it's always a challenge in the clinical research space as well for us to kind of deal with those and find those patients. And we've tried reaching out to different communities on Facebook, like you said, and online. It does work that way, but it's with AI. I think that's the one thing we're talking about. I think a lot of the data mining and the data analytics and the pattern recognition, I think we'll be able to find more and more therapies and more therapeutics for a lot of rare diseases, and maybe some. That's something I'm looking forward, and that could be a big aspect of AI where we can identify diseases and find targeted drugs therapies for those as well.
Did you hear about that entrepreneur that used AI to cure cancer?
Yeah, it was he for his dog. It was like a rare form of cancer, and he basically just used Chat GPT and went back and forth talking about all of the biopsy reports and stuff, and like literally came up with the exact treatment protocol that cured his dog's cancer. It's crazy. It's remarkable.
In that in a large setting, I mean, I know at MD Anderson and at Sloan Kettering, they've also already kind of employed some AI technologies to go through multiple treatments. I think at MD Anderson it was not very successful. That the project was not very successful. But at other institutions, they're already running through large databases of therapies and genetic sequences to identify targeted therapies for a lot of different cancers.
You know, so
Wow.
one thing that's interesting about that is like the fight right now between like these the AI companies themselves and these massive institutions like MD Anderson, these big hospital networks, is the fight over the data because the data is everything, right? And initially, the hospital systems, like I'm talking about years ago, didn't care as much about parting with their data. They didn't see the value in it, but now they've realized that the data is everything. The data is what trains AI, and the AI is only as good as the data fed into it. One of my buddies, he works for one of these AI type companies in the healthcare space, and that's actually a big fight right now. Is that the AI companies basically want the data because then they can do anything with it. You know, the data is just a training set, it's just a tool. It happens to be in healthcare right now, but if you are able to acquire that amount of very granular data and train the AI, you can apply that to like any huge system or process. And so that's what these health systems like MD Anderson, Sloan Kettering, they now don't want to divulge the data or part with it. They want to keep it all internal. And it's difficult to get the AI systems and these companies to basically just come in, learn on it, and then give an output and not take the data, basically, like keep it in a contained system. That's a hard thing to do. So that's like a big issue that they're running into right now, which I hadn't even thought of that before. I was like, oh, wow, I guess it's just a fight over the data.
Hmm. Hmm. You know, we have 20 years of rare disease patients talking about their, I guess, symptoms, treatments, I guess, natural history,
Yeah.
but we haven't figured out what we want to do with that because we are pruning our communities, right? We're starting to prune them down, and I don't know, there's lots of data, and so like,
Yeah,
I
I
don't know,
mean, that could be a
for like
huge treasure
ideas.
trove, right? Because that's like real people in real time over the course of decades talking about and discussing how they have progressed with their rare diseases, what treatments have worked and not worked. You know, it goes very quickly from just anecdote to people talking to like now you have almost like mass consensus in a way if a lot of people are discussing it together. I mean, who knows? Feeding all of that data, Ben, into some AI software and seeing what it spits out, if it's able to identify patterns that otherwise doctors, scientists, clinicians have not been able to identify because the
Yeah,
sample
I
sizes are
mean,
too small.
Yeah, and a lot of times you can find patterns in recognition and connect 3 to 4 different rare diseases and as one combined syndrome sometimes, right? You can identify,
Yeah.
okay, this patient has this patient has this patient has this, and all have them this as common source, and what could that be? And who knows the kind of discoveries we'll make with the data mining and data analytic capabilities that AI has, and I'm excited about it. I know Ben seems you're very optimistic about it. Adil's a skeptic, though. We'll see.
I'm optimistic and a skeptic about AI. I'm more of a skeptic, like we've talked about on the social ramifications and human-human interaction and how that's already taken a backseat with social media, and I'm worried it'll continue to with AI.
wait, you mean skeptic as that you don't believe, or worried about the
I'm a
negative
skeptic
consequences?
in terms of the hype around AI being a panacea for everything. I believe AI is an amazing technology and is going to power forward. I'm a skeptic on claiming that it's all going to be awesome. I'm just, I think it's great for efficiency processes, blah, blah, blah. I'm worried and hesitant about its effect on this, on human to human talk, human interaction, creativity, ideas, people just outsourcing their brain to an algorithm. That's where my worry is.
You mean it's agents talking to agents, and that's the future?
Yeah, agents talking to agents, people being even more reclusive, you know, everyone walking around in a city with their head down looking at their phones, and now instead of just swiping on social media or TikTok, it'll be a conversation with AI or something like that. I think it's just another means to be more plugged into the digital world rather than the real world around us, which isn't all bad. I just think it's ripe for more social harm than social media alone has done. of which
Well, you
there's
happen
tons
to
of
know
that.
that there's trends. There's counter trends. So some of the kids nowadays, they're like they're not doing dating apps. They're not like social media. They're like specific times where they're actually, you know what, we're starting to see, and they're young enough where they see, and we're going to put our phones down, and we're going to take control. And there's this thing called friction maxing. You know, friction maxing.
No, tell me.
Friction maxing is where, I mean, this is a whole like maxing. You know, looks maxing, right? You know.
No, dude, I'm not well versed in it. Tell me. I-
Mix maxing
Tell me.
is like these bros who are like Gen Z, and
Okay.
they do like they they try to maximize their looks, right?
Okay.
And some of the things are like the mewing, you know, mewing.
No, bro.
Dude, you're like you're man, you're deep in the lingo, bro.
Why am I telling you guys this? So mewing is like these dental exercises. Sometimes they're with like devices where you clench, 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 and it's supposed to build like is a masseter. Is that what it is?
Yeah, the big muscle here.
Yeah, as well as like jaw definition and maybe
It's
even
called
like
mewing,
bone
like a
definition.
cat, like mew mew.
Mewing. And so basically you try to build a defined jawline along with other things. So we're talking about like how your hair looks, going to the gym a lot. So that's called looks maxing. It's a whole trend on Gen Z. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is maxing. And so there's friction maxing. And so friction maxing is relevant to this because it means getting out there and doing hard things. So that's like a counter trend where you've gotten soft, digital, stay in your room, play video games, and there's these like, you know, mostly Gen Z men, Gen Z boys who are doing friction maxing, which means going out and doing hard things like, I don't know, physically like rucking, like the voluntary poverty stuff, like
Yeah.
pushing themselves to the limit because they realize like, yeah, you know, these things are making us soft. Being online all the time is making us soft. So yeah,
Bet you learned about that on Joe Rogan too.
That's cool though, dude. I'm glad. That makes me happy that people are
It is.
maxing. I like that. I'm gonna
It's
start
very,
friction
I mean,
maxing.
and the counterculture stuff that comes in, it's great because I think Gen Z going towards friction maxing and look maxing and letting go of their phones and focusing on the important things in life is something we all can learn from. You know, that's something we all should employ in our life. Adil and I have talked about getting rid of our phones and minimizing screen time. I've
Dude,
tried.
I wanna just get a flip phone. Well, I'm serious. Like I would be so happy going back to my old school Nokia brick phone, like the first phone I had when I turned 16.
well, they're making them again.
It's almost like forcing yourself to be less available to like a notification at all times. Just text and phone call. That would be amazing.
I mean, it's getting popular in Silicon Valley too. He's going back to the flip phones.
Yeah. So I have another
Oh,
question for you, Ben. Kind of like similar AI thing, but just a different topic. Is you kind of lived through, and we're in the workforce, specifically in tech, and software development, and all during the whole like .com bubble, like when the internet was basically taking off like crazy. And it was huge, right? It was like a revolutionary technology. And now, I mean, so many people have grown up not knowing a world where the internet doesn't exist. It's changed everything. How do you see the AI boom right now in comparison to that? I mean, you have seen and are currently seeing both of them from infancy onwards. Like, are there parallels? Are they quite different? I mean, what do you think about that, just from someone from your tech and software background?
Yeah, I mean, my gut reaction is to listen to those podcasters and pundits that are saying this is very similar in that it's an amazing, amazing technology, but there are bubbles in the companies that are building this technology. They're not going to do financially well, right? So, as a society, right, like there's people who say that society, yes, we're going to benefit so much from all the money going into these technologies, but the specific companies that we're betting big on, they may not be the big winners, right?
Yeah.
And but then you have counter arguments. You have some people like I was talking to an AI hedge fund, um, I don't know, fund manager. He runs an AI hedge fund, and he's very intellectually give you like the answers of why every company out there that is currently receiving all this money is going to be a winner, right? So it's kind of like you can't have a really intellectual argument, right? Because you can argue both sides. You can find really good arguments for both sides,
Yeah.
and so it just depends. Like his incentive, he's taking money in to bet on AI. So of course he's going to say that AI is a great place to put your money, right? I think the picks and shovels bet is a decent bet, but there's probably a lot of people who are going to lose a lot of money with some of these crazy valuations out there. Um, that's the parallel that I see. The valuations are crazy. The technology is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, the technology is amazing for sure. I hear you and I agree with you. And Humayun and I have talked about this in a lot of settings outside of even here, is that I do think there's a lot of purposeful hype with a lot of these AI companies because everyone hyping it. You listen to interviews. It's the guys that own the companies or the founders, like Sam Altman, Jensen Huang, all the Google guys, Microsoft. These companies that have billions invested in it are the ones saying every white collar job in 5 years is going to be replaced. AI is going to be doing surgery in 2 minutes, like everything. And everything that is spouted by these guys, I mean, they stand to benefit in tons of money from everyone believing it, and just more hedge funds, more Wall Street, more of the Gulf country oil money being funneled in. Everyone funneling more and more money and investment into these AI companies, thinking the same thing, that it's a cycle. Like, oh, everything's going to be replaced. We better fund these companies because they're going to take over. It perpetuates itself.
Yeah, I don't know which companies, which is why I'm hedging. You know,
Yeah, I mean, it's
one
hard
of
to
them
pick
exactly.
like
I'm
anyone.
doing both.
The
Yeah,
FOMO can be real, right? The fear of missing out on that big winner can be big, and that's when you realize you want to kind of delve into a little bit of everything. And but the biggest thing you can do right now is ride the wave, teach yourself, get educated, and stay ahead of the curve. So when that opportunity comes, you're ready. Yeah.
yeah. That fear of missing out, if you get that, like that should be like a warning flag. Maybe don't invest.
Yeah.
If it's
Because
coming
you're
from
probably already behind the train.
Yeah. All right, guys. Good episode. Good talking to you, Ben. Inspiring story. Loved the whole journey, and I hope someone listens to this and gets inspired by it too, to be a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, just take that first leap. Thanks for joining us, Ben, and thanks everybody for tuning in to Two Docs One Mic. We'll catch you next time.